Welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. My name is Michael LeBlanc, and I am your host. This podcast is produced in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. Ron Thurston, welcome back to the Voice of Retail podcast, my friend. Great to hear your voice. How are you?
I'm excellent, Michael. Thank you. It's launch week of a new book, which is exciting and exhausting, but it's been an incredible week, and I'm really grateful to be back on the show with you.
Oh, fantastic. It's a Friday, and no doubt it's been a long week. Where am I finding you? Are you in Miami now, I think? Is that where you are?
I am in Miami. Yeah, now have been here permanently for the last couple of years, and it's a beautiful place. It's paradise every day. What can I say?
Well, you know, it is a wonderful place. I will not take issue with that at all. Well, listen, you're back on the mic. You got a new book. It's such a great opportunity to talk to you. We're going to delve into the new book. Obviously, the listeners would figure out that you and I know each other. Maybe they didn't hear our first interview together, or somehow I haven't come across you in social media. So tell us a little bit about who you are and your background and how you spend your time today when you're not writing best-selling books, because we're going to also talk about that.
Awesome. Thank you. So my name is Ron Thurston. I'm a longtime retail executive. So I've had the pleasure and the honor to lead the field teams for brands like Gap is really where I started, where I grew up, West Elm, Apple, Tory Burch. I helped launch the retail concepts for Bonobos. I ran Saint Laurent for North and South America up until about 3-4 years ago now. I ran Intermix for North America under Gap ownership, and so I have very much a passion for everything stores, everything people, store design, customer experience. You know, I spend my entire career in the field leading those teams. And I think we are at a very interesting point in our industry where this conversation has become even more important, even more relevant about human connection and about the importance of stores. And I think predictions that we've all been making over the last 5 years have not all come true. And we have, we're back, in many cases, back to basics. And so I have loved that kind of frontline. My first book, which came out actually in 2020, was called Retail Pride, The Guide to Celebrating Your Accidental Career. Because as we know, so many people that choose retail as a career, particularly on the store side, didn't choose that. It kind of chose them, as people like to describe, because you become this business owner and entrepreneur and HR leader and merchant and loss prevention manager. You do all the jobs, and it's quite like I won't say addicting is kind of an aggressive word, but there's a love of running stores that comes when you do it every day, and you get to start over every day when you unlock the front doors. You have the opportunity to create magic and to create experiences and to develop a team. Often that accidental team are their first jobs. So your impact on the future of work in retail, considering the massive millions of people who work in it, it becomes exponentially more important and relevant. And I was able to go on tour with that book around the country. I think we're going to speak a little bit more about that. Here we are 4.5 years later after that book and writing a new one that's not specifically for retail, but specifically related to how we show up as humans. How do we show up with pride? How do we understand the current job market climate and use our best resources, which are ourselves? How do you as a leader think about optimizing the human potential and discovering everyone's greatest potential around you? That's the work. Is kind of the counter to so much of the AI conversation is yes, but we have to also understand what our strengths are as humans and how that really plays into the future of work in every industry, but it certainly applies to retail.
All right. So here's random question for you, but it's very related to your new book. How many people have you hired over the course of your retail career? How many people?
Oh, wow.
If you had to put a number to it, how many have you hired?
Hired certainly in the hundreds. When you think about how many new stores I've opened, new concepts, it's hundreds. It may be close to 1,000. I've interviewed certainly thousands of people, and that plays into what I do as a podcast host, what I also get to do on stage, but it's also what I get to do just as part of life. You learn more about what people are really thinking and feeling at this, at given different moments of their career or what's happening in the world. And I love just to talk to people, and that's the retailer in me. Your career is talking to strangers. And that's what I loved about it, is every day people are walking in who you've never met before, and they leave as a friend. And you may, during that time, you may have had a conversation or sold them something that forever changed their life. Yeah. And there's such power in thinking about that as the retail career versus the day in, day out, the grind, the working in the mall, all of it that it takes. The people side of this is really, for me, has come from so many interviews and touch bases and the love of them.
Do you miss that part of your career? I mean, you've pivoted so well from when I first met you. I mean, you're already 180 degrees away from that pivot already. You were already close to it. But do you miss the rush? Do you miss all those things? Or now are you like really enjoying let's call it mentorship, certainly with your writing, and guidance? It's a new level. But do you miss kind of the unlocking the door on Saturday morning and getting ready for showtime?
To be honest, Michael, I do. Sometimes I spend a lot of time in stores. I'm lucky to live here in Miami that has, I think, some of the best retail in the country. And I'm always in stores. I'm always speaking to teams. So it's a little bit of, I'm kind of doing it through you. I was in London last week and spent some time getting a tour with Ian Scott and people who do this really so well on retail safaris. And I again met teams and stores who I just found so captivating, so interesting, and so committed to their team and the customer. And it's an attitude and a commitment that is, I find, incredibly refreshing.
When you see it working so well, I'm sure it brings great memories and great thoughts. Now, do you ever walk into a store and say, boy, can I talk to the store manager? Because if you just did a few little things differently, you'd have a better outcome than I'm seeing in your store today. Are you ever tempted to just kind of do that when you're in the store?
I think, tempted, because you're right. You see it. When you've done it as long as I did, you see exactly what the challenges are. But I also understand that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Much of what the customer doesn't see are the challenges around people and the challenges maybe around inventory deliveries and supply chain. That there's a lot that goes on that the customer doesn't need to know about. And so I'm always aware that I see the opportunity, but I don't know the context or the root cause. So I try not to judge. It's hard. It's really hard because you see it right in front of you. But I do my best and smile and say thank you to people doing the work.
I don't want to dwell too much on your first book, but I do want to dwell a little bit, so to speak, on your experiences when you launched that first book, Retail Pride, and you got the trailer and you did your tour. As you reflect on that time now, what is it, 2 years ago, probably since you sold the trailer.
Exactly.
And what resonates most about that part of your professional and personal life in that period?
Michael, I had great specific intention that I knew that the only way I could get the real story of what's happening with retail outside of New York City was to leave New York City. I think that there's this sense of, you don't understand the challenges of this market or this brand or this customer. And I wanted to meet people where they were. And so to be able to see it and feel it and have those conversations and host the Retail in America podcast and interview them, it struck me, and often how similar we are, and yet we think we're so different.
Right.
You know, when you live in the heart of New York City, you think that you're so special and there's nothing like it. But the reality is the challenges are similar in retail, whether you're in Walmart or a small family-owned business. It's people and customers and pricing and product and all the things that make retail great are not that different. And I think that that's the piece too. And we often get caught up in kind of the price of the product dictates the pride in your work. And so luxury brands think that they are so different than everyone else. And having run them, I can tell you it's not true. And we all have similar challenges. And I think that that's the greatest takeaway for me, is that we have a lot more in common than not. And when I lived in an RV and we camped in campgrounds all over the country, every day your neighbors change. Yeah. And so you have the chance again to meet strangers and to say, where are you from? Why are you here? What are you doing? You know, what business are you in? Tell me about the challenges of that business. And so there's this constant sense of curiosity about people that certainly drives me. But I think if all of us got out of our comfort zone and had more conversations with strangers, some of what's happening in the world, I think, would not be so dramatic right now.
My fondest memories, or my clearest memories of that time of you, was, first of all, Steve Dennis and I kind of chuckling when we were interviewing you for our pod, Remarkable Retail, and you were in your podcasting studio in the trailer, and it was raining. Yes. And then it was like, I didn't really think about what would happen if it rained really hard, because it sounded like you were in like a tornado, but it was just, you were in a big steel tube basically
Exactly right.
And you touched on something that also resonated with me when you said exactly what you said. You know, you visited these Walmarts and you said, wow, these are really sophisticated operations, and maybe my perception of them wasn't that, but exactly as you reflected, right? I that part of the learning, and just getting out and meeting people and seeing what people do. It's so fantastic. All right, let's get to the new book, your latest one, Human Pride, Optimizing Your Human Potential in a Digital Job Market. Now, it's written in 3 parts. I've had the chance pleasure to have a little early advance copy, advice on the modern job search, leadership, and personal development. My first question to you is, listen, there's a lot of books on the shelf about HR and job searches and things like that. When you sat back and said, there's something missing, and I think I have something to say, talk about that process that as you thought about this book and where you thought it fit on the shelf or on people's bookshelves. It's,
the word pride shows up for me often. And so the reason I use that, and I'm fully aware that word for many people brings up a lot of emotion. And whether you think it's one of the 7 deadly sins, I'm a gay man and I have my own relationship with that word, this idea. But the more I kind of worked through this and spoke to people about what pride really means, the more I thought about this, it's very much a exercise in self-reflection and choices that we make about how we show up. And so I thought more about this and said, throughout the conferences that you and I both get to attend and speak at, is, so much of the conversation is about technology, is about faster, better, how is AI changing work, all of this. But the exact opposite of that is, but how do I show up? How am I clear about who I am? What are my core values? What is my story? How do I tell that story? How do I show up with this story in a job interview? How do I lead my team to be proud of their work? How do I think about, are they proud of me? How do we all think differently about human connection? And so this idea of, this isn't just retail pride, this is actually human pride. And this is about optimizing human potential and discovering what's great about all of us. And so the book actually isn't it's less about a how-to and more of a exercise in self-reflection of what actually are your core values. What is important to you? What choices do you make when you go into a job interview? What choices do you make when you are hiring or interviewing or leading a diverse team? It's all with intention and it's all with choice. And if we think about this, I want people to be proud of this work, of me, of the influence that we have as leaders, and understand its importance and its impact on those around us. If you do that well, you become unstoppable in so many ways. And I believe that to be so true. It's how I've led. My goal was always, how do I make sure my teams are proud of what they do? And most importantly, proud of themselves for the work. And are you providing space for them to do that through their work and discovering their strengths? And I think that this message is often maybe misinterpreted as being kind of too easy or too much of a not enough of a direction. And I think all of this starts inside. I think this is about self-reflection. This is about crafting your own narrative and not letting the spin of whatever is happening today in AI influence how you lead. Like, understand that, but stay true and strong to who you are. And for me, when you reach that place, then the rest of it doesn't throw you every day. And that consistency in leaders is what people actually look for. That's been proven again, of like, you want your leader to show up with that same level of intention every day. And you know what to expect, and you know how to deliver the results because you show up consistently. And for me, it's rooted in pride. It's rooted in choices that we all make.
I love the focus and your focus in the book on storytelling, and it made me reflect on that kind of old brand nostrum, right? People buy the story before they buy the product. And I liked how you anchored that in to the, as you say, to the person, right? What is your story? How are you going to tell your story? How are you going to say, listen, I understand AI, but I also have a story to tell, and I think I have a place in this role, in this organization, in this store. I love that connection. Have you always been a storyteller from that perspective? And is that what you look for? You talk to 1,000 people, right? Is that the thing that jumps out at you? They really know how to tell their story and just, have that conversation, maybe a lost art, but hopefully not. I think they can rediscover it in your book, right?
I'd like to think so, or understand its importance. And to be honest, Michael, the first question I usually ask in a job interview is, tell me your story. Like, I'm not interested in your resume. Tell me your story. And sometimes candidates would look at me with a blank face and say, where do I start? And I said, just start. Tell me your story. And if your first job and you're 19, you have a story to tell. If you're our age, you have a story to tell. And I think that there's the ability to then own the experience as a storyteller in an interview or as a leader is what captivates people's attention. And the idea of, well, your story isn't the same every day. Your story is actually unique to you and what's currently happening. And I think there's a level of confidence that comes with your ability to tell your story and digging deep. I was actually just at a university speaking to students, and I shared exactly this. Like, you're going on some of your first internship interviews, first job interviews, learn how to tell your story. And so I was asking some of the students, well, so what would you say if I were sitting in an interview with you and I said, tell me your story? They were blank. They really were blank. And I said, well, let me help you. So, hi, my name's Ron. I'm from here. I chose to go to this university because this is what I've learned so far. These are the goals that I want to achieve while I'm here. This is the outside activities that I'm doing. My dream internship would help me craft these skills. And so if you just answer those questions, which are all off the top of my head, you've told your story.
Sure. Yeah.
That's it. And I don't know and I do think some of it is social media driven. We don't spend as much time talking about our story as we do watching it on Instagram or trying to tell it through photographs or TikTok. And I think it's an art to this that I very much emphasize in the book, that this is a skill that will allow multiple opportunities to unfold if you learn how to do this. Alex, I could talk to you for hours about this, but we don't have hours. But I did want to ask you this storytelling. Let's flip the lens a little bit and talk about it as a leaders. Let's focus on leadership now, because we've talked about job prospects, very important. But as a leader, this storytelling element, both of storytelling with your team, to your team, but also with your team. And I love the idea of there's so much going on around us. There's so much noise on any given day, but particularly now, there's a lot of noise and uncertainty, right? Yeah.
And if I talk to retail executives, and mostly like, listen, just chalk the field for me. I can operate. But with all this uncertainty, it adds another layer of complexity about a narrative or storytelling. What's your advice to the retail leaders and leaders in general about storytelling with their team, for their team, together, and to customers?
Yeah. So I think great storytelling always starts with asking great questions first of those around you. When you have a team, your role as a leader is to discover what they need from you today. We are in service to our teams as a leader. It's never about you. It's not about the company. It's about how can I be in service to create an environment where you are thriving and you're proud and you're doing great work and you share these experiences with your friends and family. That's our job as leaders. And so if you continue to ask great questions and you teach them how to tell their story back to you, you can create a dialogue that is about storytelling. And so you say, tell me more about your goals. Tell me more about what you want to accomplish. What would you like to learn this month here at work? Who would you like to meet? And then maybe they give you, a list of things, and maybe they actually don't know. So you help them uncover maybe what some of that future opportunity is. Tell me about the things you are feeling most successful at. Tell me about the things you're most challenged in. And so this dialogue that you're creating is them teaching the ability for them to craft their story. And you're giving them more opportunity to succeed, more opportunity to showcase what their strengths really are. And through discovering those strengths, then they can go on and say, wow, I'm actually I'm exceptional at these specific tasks. And therefore that influences the decisions I make. And right there, you're building a story all around you. But the opposite, I think, often happens is that you are hired to do a specific job to a specific job description, in a kind of corporate office environment or a work from home environment. That level of curiosity and that continued narrative around building, and as leaders, building the kind of ecosystem around your team to help them be successful is often missing. An annual review or a quarterly touch base, in my opinion, doesn't move at the pace at which learning should happen. And I come from this world of, when you're in stores, you're in the constant loop of feedback. Every day you have to deliver results. Every day you start over. And so you're like, what worked? What didn't? How was that customer experience? Who's in the fitting room? What's that customer in the fitting room story? I used to love to do that. Someone would come out of the fitting room and I would say, well, who's in there? Like, what is she trying on? Why is she here? What is she looking for? And so I would teach them actually then how to be more curious. And so then everyone builds on top of that. But in corporate, that's hard to do. And, or I shouldn't say it's hard. It's not as common. So I would take the approach of,
interesting.
I'm going to dig deep into as many people as I can and understand where people's strengths and opportunities are, and then help them be the most successful version of themselves. And when you interview people and you ask, like, who are those leaders in their life that helped get them where they are those people who saw something in them that they didn't even know they had, or gave them the shot that nobody else would, or gave them
or
the
ask
interview.
the question that nobody else has. Like,
ask them questions.
Nobody's ever asked me to tell my story before. Nobody's ever expressed interest in me in that way. I want to bridge over to something I found really interesting, and I know it's a gnarly issue and it's not going away. In fact, it's being accelerated by technology, and that's gig work. And all the things we've been talking about for the past 20 minutes or so about building, motivating team, leadership, telling your story. Talk about how you're thinking about that with gig work and flexible roles. I mean, it's not new that your store allocation of hours would be higher or lower or sideways. You'd get temp people in for the holidays, for example. So I think that's getting, if I can say, worse, not better, in terms of you got, people working in 5 different retailers, just doing different gig work in any context. How do you apply your thinking and your experience and what you write in this book? You do apply it here, but share a little bit of those insights for the listener, because I think that's particularly interesting.
I think it's a very interesting time, to be honest, that we have this opportunity. And so gig work is so available to people. And I think of it more in terms of, what can I learn today about myself by taking on some of this work that isn't full-time, but I could learn something from it. So is it driving? Is it working in retail? Is it special assignments? Is it creating something unique? Like, where can I find opportunities to learn? Again, I'm kind of building on the narrative here of I'm discovering my strengths, and to see, like, what else can I gain from this experience? Be it temporary. So low commitment, high return on skill development is how I would look at this. And for many people that don't have the opportunity in kind of full-time work, 2 or 3 different gig opportunities is this constant circle of learning around different ideas and different brands potentially, and different positions within different companies,
and different leaders and different leadership style, different coworkers, correct, and different contexts. So I love this idea because gig work can be a dark place because you're never really part of a team as an individual, right?
True.
But your ideas as the individual try to say, what can I learn? What can I take away? Who can I meet? Versus, I'm just here and then I'm gone. I'm not really part of the team. That to me is a real challenge for leaders everywhere, I think, is to make people who are kind of, doing gig work for you feel part of the team. But the reality is they're only going to work. They're going to work and then they're going to move on to something else, right? That feels like a real challenge. Is that new, Ron? I mean, as I said, it's not unusual for retailers to hire temp workers, over the holidays or peak time, but it feels more urgent to figure this out right now. You're right. It's not new, Michael, but I would say it is more urgent because, we are looking, today in the current economic climates, payroll is under dramatic scrutiny. Headcount is, probably one of the lowest it's been. I hear references to brands going back to what they're calling their COVID playbook. I've heard that mentioned now several times. And so when I hear that is about minimum staffing. It is about, shorter operating hours. It is about lower inventory levels. There's a lot that goes into that concept that we all experience. I was running stores then too. I understand it. I remember deeply. And so if that is in fact your playbook today, then things like gig work and on-demand staffing becomes a very important part of your business model. But you're right. They don't just become bodies. They become, welcome to your 4-hour shift today. Right. Have you worked here before? And what would you like to learn while you're here? And so don't treat them like a temp, treat them like part of the team and say, I'm so glad that you're here.
you're here today because we only have 2 people working, and so we're going to be running around. But I want to make sure that while you're here, that you leave at the end of your shift having learned something. Like, what would you like that to be today? If you ask someone that question, their tone and their engagement immediately changes. And they're like, wow, like no one's ever asked me that.
That would not be a common question.
Would not be common, but why can't it be? It's so easy. And at the end of the shift, it'd say, so you did fantastic job today. I observed you doing this. Let me give you some feedback on the work you did for us here today. Did we accomplish your goal of what you wanted to learn? And so like that is a great way to close. It takes literally 60 seconds. That is a leader's role to speak like that, in my opinion. That is human pride. That is, I'm treating you as a human to human. This is a learning opportunity. This is not me just exchanging money for you. This is you're working for me with the intention to learn. And if I'm not teaching you, if I'm not providing you with a resource to use in your next shift or your next gig job, then I didn't do my job as a leader. And this ability to kind of navigate all of that is, I think retail leaders often they're so under pressure to move fast that they don't take, I don't exaggerate, 60 seconds of an intentional conversation can change someone's entire experience. And the skills, part of, I write a lot about it in Human Pride, because I don't want it to be over complex. I want you to have easy tools in your pocket to create pride on your team. But it starts inside. Are you ready to lead like that? And are you also ready for the feedback that comes? You start asking people questions.
Yeah. I like your acknowledgement of speed, because one of my most hated sayings is, move fast and break things. I love move fast and make things. And what you're talking about is making a team, creating something, still moving fast, because pace isn't getting any slower. My last question was going to be, what's the role of human pride in shaping the next generation of leaders? But I think you just articulated it as well as I can ever hear it. Listen, I think this is a great book, and once again, you've taken a lifetime of experience and shared that with everyone, and you're kind of walking the talk for sure, so to speak. So once again, my guest is Ron Thurston. The new book is Human Pride: Optimizing Your Human Potential in a Digital Job Market. It's available today, right? It's out right now.
Is out right now. It's the #1 bestseller on Amazon right now. So I will take that, and I'm proud of that. I will say
there you go. Well, I'm proud to know you, because since we've known each other, what was it, the beginning of when you first released your first book in COVID? It's been great
5
to know
years.
you and learn from you. So thanks again, and thanks for coming on the pod and sharing your insights and wisdom and putting it down on paper and doing all the things you do. It's much appreciated, I know, by me in the industry. So Ron, thanks so much for joining me on the pod. Continued success. Hopefully we'll wind up in the same place at the same time sooner than later. But until then, I wish you safe travels and a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate you and your support and having me back on the pod and our friendship. I cherish that very much. So thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, follow on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically each week. And be sure and check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast with Steve Dennis and the Global E-Commerce Leaders Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Vaughn, Senior Retail Advisor, Keynote Speaker. If you want more content or chat, follow me on LinkedIn. Safe travels, everyone.